AITA for telling my sister she has no one but herself to blame for her daughter not wanting to see her? My 30M sister, 32F, is a recovering heroin addict and has a 12-year-old daughter. She had already been an addict for a couple years when she got pregnant and cut off most of the family when we didn't give her money. She was also on probation at the time. She ended up failing a drug test while pregnant and had her daughter taken at birth. Literally at birth, she never even got to see her. I'll give her credit and say she cleaned up her act big time when that happened. She went to rehab, got a job, and is now 12 years sober and living on her own. My niece ended up getting placed with a nice foster family who adopted her, but my sister got supervised visitation when she was 4. Unsurprisingly, she had no attachment to my sister and saw her foster family as her real one. She still gets a few hours a weekend to see her, but by now my niece has gone from indifferent to annoyed at having to spend 90 minutes every Saturday chatting with a stranger. She'd now prefer not to see my sister again, and she agreed to that. She's been beside herself for weeks now, talking about how it feels like all her work was for nothing, and that it's like they took her away again. I reminded her that the girl has no attachment to her, and that's her fault for doing drugs while pregnant. She should have stayed clean, and this is the consequence of that mistake. She accused me of being unsympathetic and said I have no idea what it's like to give birth and never meet your baby after that, along with some other insults. Our mother found out from her and said that while I was right, it didn't need to be said then and now. I beat a 15-year heroin addiction. Still an addict, but now the time/money/effort goes into restoring vintage synthesizers. I was all but convinced I would die an opiate addict. It started with Oxy, which was honestly the best feeling I had ever felt. I was addicted from the very first day I tried it. Having never been into drugs previously, aside from pot on rare occasions, I was naive and completely unprepared for how quickly I would lose control. Ultimately, by the end, I was doing 3 to 6 grams of black a day. The withdrawals alone were 100x worse than any sickness or injury I've ever experienced in my entire life. I tried everything to quit, several times over. I even flew to the Bahamas to try a treatment that is illegal in the US, ibogaine. However, this also failed. Consequently, I truly believed my situation was hopeless. Finding a passion for restoring vintage synthesizers gave me the ability to sort of transfer my addiction to a much healthier one. Still, it was impossibly hard and I relapsed many times. Early in sobriety/recovery, I can recall countless conversations with myself while driving home from work. You could go pick some up right now, but you've also got that JX3PX at home that you're so close to fixing and hearing for the first time. One day at a time, it became easier to pick synthesis over self-medication. It became the most important tool in my ability to get clean and stay clean. Learning something new every day is both exciting and incredibly gratifying. There's still so much more to know. Looking back, it feels like I lived half of my life in a coma. I wasted so much time. If you are struggling with addiction, please know there is hope no matter how bad you think it is. I am here to support anyone who is struggling with addiction. Please don't hesitate to ask for help or just to talk. I did heroin yesterday. I am not a drug user and have never done anything besides pot back when I was a teen, AMA. This is a little long. I have never been a drug user. I drink once in a while and smoked pot years ago back when I was a teen in high school a few times, and that's it. I'm 24 now, have a master's and a well-paying full-time job. Yesterday I was walking through Washington Square Park where I pass every day, and there are always people there looking to sell drugs, not in the park anymore due to cameras, but it is well known you can meet a dealer then and do the transaction elsewhere these days. They usually don't solicit drugs to you unless you stop to stand around near one of them for some reason or look like you're looking for something. Yesterday I happened to stop by a row of benches to check some messages on my phone when a dealer on the bench to my right asks me if I need anything. My life has been pretty boring the last few years and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risks, or done anything crazy, so I figured what the hell, maybe I'll buy some pot. It's been a while. I said yeah, and after asking my several times if I'm a cop, he gives me his number and tells me to meet him at a fast food place several blocks away and he will hook me up. I say alright and nervously check to make sure I have cash and go meet this shady looking dude. We sit down and after hounding me asking if I'm a cop, he asks what I need. I tell him I just want a dime bag and he says something like, "Nah, sorry man, I only sell half ounces, you can take that and I've got some coke and H." At this point I didn't want to buy half an ounce of pot. I probably never smoked more than an eighth in my life, but then I started considering his last word, heroin. I've heard so much about it and how crazy addictive it is and seen it in the movies and TV. I'm thinking The Wire here, one of my favorite shows, and it really started to intrigue me. I've always wondered what it would be like to do heroin. Out of nowhere I say I'll take the H and we do the deal there. I give him the cash under the table and he slides me a small order of fries with a little stamped wax baggie in it, then he tells me to let him leave first. I put it in my pocket, then nervously race home, my heart racing, cannot believing what I just did. I held onto that bag in my pocket, palms sweating the whole ride home. When I get home I open the bag and dump some golden flakes and powder on my glass coffee table. At this point I don't even know what to do. I know you can snort heroin, but it looked all flaky, so I try to remember how they did it in the movies, but they always seem to inject it in film, so I start googling how to snort heroin like an idiot and do a little research on the stuff and how much to take. I used a card to get it into a fine powder and move a small bump to the side, which I inhaled through a dollar bill. I didn't feel anything yet, so I snorted a small line, which was essentially half the bag. There was very little inside. I waited and in a few minutes I had the most pleasurable feeling of pure relaxation and bliss wash over me. I just sat there and everything felt amazing. I nodded off and it was great. I had the TV on but wasn't paying attention. I must have sat around for 4 hours doing nothing but feel total pleasure. It was like a full body orgasm times 10 that kept going on and on. When I would nod off it felt like I was in a pure conscious lucid dream-like state. Sometimes it felt like I was leaving my body. At this point I did the rest of it and stayed up all night and must have been high for 10 hours straight. I might have slept at one point. It's hard to tell the difference when you nod off and everything feels good regardless. Just the feeling of being under a blanket was amazing. I was blown away by the power of this drug and just how orgasmic it felt. I never understood why people did drugs before and got so hooked on them, but now I see why. I have the urge to do it again, but I will resist and not do it, at least not for a long time. I understand the addiction potential and how someone could easily tear apart their lives with this stuff. Heroin is pure powdered pleasure. I actually feel proud of myself for having the balls to do something this crazy, and I feel like it was a valuable life experience and my window into another world and part of society. I will never forget the day I did heroin. I was heavily addicted to Ambien for 7 years. After the first year it stopped making me sleepy and I took it just to get high plus a sleeping pill to put me to sleep. My day revolved around getting to 7 p.m. so I could put a pill under my tongue and let it dissolve, then eat dinner so my food didn't absorb the potency. I then smoked 1 to 2 hits of weed. Then I'd generally drive to my dad's house where I kept my bottle in a shoe outside his door, because if I kept it at home I'd take 3 to 4. Instead I'd just drive over and take that much. Almost got killed by a car with its headlights off one night. Every morning I woke up with a sense of dread, anticipating the damage control I'd have to do because of the bizarre things I'd do and say on it. At least once a month I'd soberly wake up in the middle of the night, say I was done, and flush the remainder of the month's supply down the toilet. Then the next evening would roll around and I'd have anxiety attacks because I needed my Ambien. March 2011 I was living with a guy roommate and we went over to the neighbors to play cards on a Friday night. I had taken the Ambien before going over and was acting bizarre. I begged my roommate to take me to get ice cream at 7 to 11 after, and he was pissed because he couldn't drink anything if he had to drive me. As I was eating my ice cream in bed that night and staring at my computer screen, I realized I no longer got that escape/buzz anymore, and a voice in my head said clearly, "What are you doing? This isn't even worth it anymore." I flushed the rest of the Ambien down the toilet and never touched it again. "26 heroin addict in college is struggling. I am extremely exhausted mentally, emotionally, and physically, so I will try to keep this concise and to the point. From ages 19 to 22, I was an 4 heroin user. I destroyed my life and lost everything, so I went to rehab for a few months. I joined AA upon my exit, found spirituality, and went back to school. In the last 4 years, I turned my life around completely, gaining a host of friends, knowledge from reading over 50 books on self-help, psychology, and philosophy, some I've read many times over, began to eat healthy and exercise religiously, developed great habits/discipline, etc., etc. Now, I'm at a UC studying an engineering degree that I was so graciously accepted to for this fall. Before moving up here, earlier this year I began my first serious relationship since starting sobriety. We fell in love like crazy and had an amazing last few months going out, attending concerts, and committed to having a long-distance relationship, SoCal to NorCal. We met in AA a year ago and had a deep connection. We started as friends that secretly loved each other for the first 6 months until we became serious. Over the summer, she began to drink occasionally. I started ketamine therapy for psychological/spiritual reasons shortly after. We began to abuse my meds until I started picking up street K a month ago. Our mental health started declining fast. My usage became more frequent at the beginning of this week, more so than ever. My GF suddenly broke up with me midweek due to this, citing my behavior, the LDR, and her secretly getting wasted all month behind my back. I went off the rails the moment she dumped me, consuming copious amounts of K. The last few days have been a blur consisting of moments of mania, psychosis, and multiple ego deaths. Today is my second day of being sober again, but I still feel like I'm at an emotional low. My GF and I have had a couple conversations the last few days and it's looking hopeful we might stay together, but she can't guarantee it. I obviously need a lot of help, which I plan on seeking through school resources and local AA meetings. I've told my roommates and some close friends back home, and they're all very supportive. I feel like I can't even access any of the philosophy I've retained these last few years that have helped to keep me psychologically intact. I've been slowing getting back to taking care of myself, cleaning my room, and starting overdue homework. I'll begin with meditations again tonight. Only my doctor knows I was a heroin addict for 3 years. It all started with a major drinking problem. Then the depression kicked in. I lost a mother to cancer. My closest friend, he ended up being a con artist. Then there was the stress of a very intense job. I couldn't sleep at night. Work was really hard. I had no friends. I felt ugly. I was almost 250 pounds at 5 feet 6 inches. With nothing left in my heart and soul. I started doing heroin to try to kill myself. I was really hoping the first time would kill me. Instead, it just helped me sleep. Then it helped me with my drinking problem. Backstory on the drinking: I had been drinking for about 20 years. I would drink from 6 to 10 beer almost every night of the week. Then I was a junkie. After about 1 month of doing heroin every few nights to help me sleep, I started doing it every night. Then after another month of that, I started doing it on my lunch breaks. I wanted to numb out everything that was going on with work and the loss of 2 very close people. I never hurt or stole or did anything harmful to anyone during my drug use. I went to work every day in the pit of sadness and a very harmful addiction. That was my life for 2.5 years. Then I lost my job, then I lost everything. My life was heroin. Once everything was gone, I went to the doctor. Still at this point, I never stole or hurt anyone. Getting sober was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. Now I'm exactly 1 year sober. I still have nothing but a dream. I'm still not sleeping well. I still don't drink. I'm about 160 pounds. I will never do heroin again. Even if you put it in front of me. No matter what happens. I go to a shitty job every day that pays me nothing. All in hopes that one day I'll be able to buy a van and live on the road. This is my last 4 years confession. A year ago I relapsed on heroin and recovered. I never told my wife or kids. I have a wife and 2 kids, aged 14 and 11. I was a heroin addict from 16 years old to 23 years old, which was when my first son was born. My wife helped me get sober, and remains an amazing person and wife overall. Last year, my wife had surgery and got pain pills. I don't know what the fuck came over me, but I just wanted to try one to remember how good opiates feel. I was thinking, it wasn't heroin, right? So maybe I want relapse? I can't even describe how stupid of a decision it was. I wasn't depressed or particularly yearning for heroin, but I just wanted to try it. Literally right away it felt so unbelievably amazing that I took 2 more the next day. On day 3 I took about 4 to 5, I was high the entire day, feeling absolutely amazing. By day 5, I went to one of the local dealers and got heroin. Literally only took me 5 days to get back on heroin. My wife never got a hint. My kids never suspected anything. I was lucky this happened while my wife was recovering from her surgery. She was bedridden most of the day, so I was mostly free to do what I want. I didn't inject, I just snorted. I did it every single day for 2 weeks. The only suspicion was my daughter saying I was acting weird when I was high and when my son went downstairs at night and I was mumbling because I was nodding out. He just assumed I was tired. I knew I had to do something. I wanted to just leave, run away to New Mexico or something and just do heroin the entire time, then maybe come back. At the time it was literally all I wanted. I kept making these horrible, immoral excuses for my usage. Like, oh, my kids are old enough, and my wife is a good mom, they don't even need me. I can just run away and do heroin on an island forever. That was the kind of shit I would think. I knew it was bullshit, but it's so damn powerful. I ended up quitting. I just sort of forced myself to stop, which previously when I was a teen seemed impossible, but now it feels like I have more to live for. It's been a whole year since then. I remember because my wife's surgery was the day before the 4th of July.